100%. Okay, Nadia. Um, Nadia Barhoum is going to be talking about Palestine, seeds, land, and liberation. Nadia is the founder of a seed saving and land stewardship project or initiative called, is it Thurayya, Nadia?
Yeah, Thurayya.
Thurayya.
Yeah,
Okay. Hopefully it didn't,
perfect.
it wasn't that bad. So Nadia began farming in 2019, following a desire to be closer to the land and the way her family had been for generations in their small village of Al Malha, Palestine. They were forcibly expelled in 1948 by Israeli armed militias. Through Thurayya, she wants to uphold and restore relationships to the land that have been severed by ongoing occupation and dispossession in the Swana, or the Southwest Asia and North Africa region. She's growing out and saving seeds from a variety of vegetables, herbs, and other perennials from Palestine and the Swana region to share with her community in the Bay Area. And we're hoping as well here at Reimagination Farm, the other hat I wear. She hopes these special plants can bring a part of her home and their stories back to her community. So pleased to have you join us here, Nadia, and I'll have you take it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Robin and everyone at AKI. I feel really honored to be here. I think your work is so inspiring and such a beautiful way to honor your son's legacy too. So I have a slide deck prepared for this. I'm hoping to talk for about 30 minutes and then we can have a Q&A. While I kind of transition into getting my tech set up, I just wanted to maybe hear from people who are present, how familiar they are with what's happening in Palestine. It's just helpful for me to know, like, yeah, is it new to you? Are you been following what's going on? Do you feel like you have a pretty like strong foundation and knowledge of what's been going on in the history? So if you want to respond in the chat, um, that would be helpful for me. And I'm just gonna get my slides up with the shared screen. Okay.
And just as I put in the chat, folks, if it feels a little bit vulnerable or intimidating to share what you do or don't know about Palestine, totally okay to direct message Nadia or I or Anna from the AKI team. As I said in the chat, there's no shame with what you may not know, because there's also a lot that's just hidden from us, not disclosed to us. And please feel, just to name that, so there isn't this feeling of like, oh my God, I don't actually know. That's why I'm here.
Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna try to make it so that. Okay, so I titled the name of this presentation a saying in Arabic that's Al-Ard ta'rif ahlha, the land knows her people, and we'll be talking a little bit about seeds, land, and liberation in Palestine. Um, So I want to focus today on Palestine and how our struggle for liberation relates to the land and our greater shared humanity. and I would like to dedicate this talk to the people and land of Gaza. These days, it feels like when I'm asked to present things, the only appropriate thing to do is just sit and scream, honestly, for like the entirety of the time, because that's how it feels right now with everything that's going on. Um, but I know that, in sharing more, maybe we can build our movement together. So I'm hoping this conversation will bring greater awareness to the corners of the world and our consciousness that have been erased and made invisible, mostly by design. And I think that these corners are our greatest teachers about the meaning and practice of justice and right relationship with the land and people. This period since October 7th, 2023, has left me with many more questions than answers, and so I will begin this talk with a few questions. How can we, as humans on this planet, center Palestine in our conversations and actions, especially given the role of the US in its ongoing occupation and nearly 20 months of genocide in Gaza? And what does liberation look like to each of us, to us together? And how are seeds a part of that liberatory path for us collectively? And where does Palestine live in these questions? So the struggle for Palestine has always been about a return to and liberation of our lands. Over the last 100 years, Palestine has experienced one of the most devastating ethnic cleansing projects in modern history. Tomorrow, May 15th, marks the 77th year of Nakba, or catastrophe, that Palestinians underwent with the establishment of the Zionist state in 1948. And I put this map up as a visual. I think it's helpful to see the continual loss of land from the establishment of the state of Israel in 1948 until today. And you can see that this is outdated. It's 20 years old, the last panel on the right. But all of this land is historic Palestine. And since the creation of the state of Israel, this is what has happened. We have 2.3 million people who are living in the Gaza Strip, which is this green piece of land on the left, and then the West Bank is kind of. I'm talking about the panel on the right, the far right. The green land that's kind of like broken Swiss cheese blocks is the West Bank. And there are 2.9 Palestinians living in the West Bank and 2 million Palestinians living in 1948, historic Palestine, and 7.2 million Jewish Israelis living in historic Palestine. And since then, you would probably see less and less green in the West Bank because of the continual expansion of illegal Israeli settlements across the West Bank and settler roads, and that has only increased dramatically since October 7th, 2023. I think, we're not hearing as much about what's happening in the West Bank, but there have been many villages whose lands have been completely confiscated by Israel, kind of under the shadow of all of the horrors that they're committing in Gaza. So that's something else that I don't think that we're talking enough about, and many of the people in the West Bank are worried that all of the West Bank lands are going to be fully annexed by the Zionist state. So that's something else to keep in mind with everything else that's happening. And because of the Zionist state and its ethnic cleansing and expulsion of Palestinians, we have the world's largest and longest running refugee population at 6 million and counting. We are a population total of 14.8 million, so almost half of us are still refugees since 1948 or 1967. And even before the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, Palestinians resisted the ethnic cleansing of their lands, perhaps most famously in the 1936 uprisings, also called Al-Thawra al-Kubra, the Great Revolution. If we can go to the next slide, please. By 1930, a third of agricultural land in Palestine was already under the control of Zionist Jewish settlers. A beloved Palestinian writer, Ghassan Kanafani, wrote about that time: agricultural life is not merely a mode of production, but equally a way of social, religious, and ritual life. Thus, in addition to the loss of land, the Palestinian Arab rural society was being destroyed by the process of colonization. Our relationship to our land is what has sustained us over time. And I put this Mahmoud Darwish quote up. It says, وطني ليس حقيبة وأنا لست مسافر إنني العشق والأرض حبيبة. And that translates as, my homeland is not a suitcase and I am not a traveler. I am the lover and the land is the beloved. This line is from one of the most famous Palestinian poets, Mahmoud Darwish, and I love it because it expresses the continuity of Palestinian life on Palestinian land. We are not travelers, nor are we settlers to a land, but are committed to loving and taking care of her as she takes care of us. And I think this captures the essence of how our people have been able to resist the violence of Zionism and settler colonialism for so long, and more than that, how we have been able to keep our hearts open, alive, and resilient across generations. And this line also reminds me of another poet's line by Hafiz, and it's, even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. And that for me kind of also expresses our relationship to our land. And you can really see the beauty and abundance in a relationship like this when you get to see Palestine. Can we go to the next slide, please? And this is the kind of beauty and abundance of Palestine. We have villages that have been continuously inhabited for thousands of years, some of the oldest in the world. And you see this in the ancient architecture and ancient olive trees that inhabit the land. And this is a monastery in Bethlehem. You can see the beautiful garden in front of it. Next slide, please. And this is an image of a picture of Batir, which is a village actually really not far from my family's home in Al Malha in Jerusalem. It is an ancient village. They have a 4,000-year-old Roman irrigated terrace system, which you can see in this photograph. The Roman era irrigation network is still in use, and it's fed by 7 springs, which have provided fresh water for 2,000 years. This beautiful place was also under threat from the construction of the Israeli apartheid wall between the West Bank and Jerusalem. And you can see in the bottom right corner of the photo the train tracks. And that also was a way that Israel was able to confiscate lands from these villagers. And they have Israeli military jeeps patrolling at all times, making sure that nobody goes across that fence. And here I want to take some time to talk about the impact of our collective expulsion from our lands in Palestine, because I don't think that we often get to really understand what that means and what that looks like. When you strip people from their lands, you strip the land itself of these relationships, like severing an arm or a leg or an artery of a delicately balanced organism. And I think about so often how, our lands were contiguous before the formation of Israel and modern states, where people traveled freely across the region, especially between places like Syria, Lebanon, even if North Africa, Asia. I mean, the Silk Road runs right through the heart of Palestine. And when you think about these modern states and borders, we're completely cut off from one another. And where you had all of the trade and exchange and knowledge production that was created before then, it's now been completely cut off, and we're so isolated from one another. With my family in Jordan, they were expelled from Palestine. I mean, they're right next door to Palestine, and yet Palestine feels like another planet, quite literally, because they're never allowed to go back. Israel controls the borders and doesn't allow anybody to come in, essentially, and makes it like almost impossible for people to get visas to return. And so when you do that, you completely transform the ecosystem, oftentimes in ways that are more harmful to life, not just for humans, but also for the land and the life it supports. An example of this is how Zionists, largely through the Jewish National Fund, planted forests of non-native pine trees over Palestinian destroyed villages and stolen land from 1948 onward, claiming they would make the wilderness bloom, and also wanted the land to look more like Europe. But as we know from the history of this country, this is simply another form of erasure. These trees destroyed much of the biodiversity of the landscape, drank much more water than native species, and created a bigger threat for wildfires on the land. Just in the last couple of weeks, the biggest wildfire in Israel's history burned 4,700 acres of land around Jerusalem, half of which were on JNF managed forest, read stolen Palestinian land. And as I'm talking about this, I can't help but think about the landscapes and First Nations peoples here in California and the Americas who have also endured enormous harm by settler colonialism and extractive relationship to the land and the people. Next slide, please. When you destroy a community, you destroy the web of relations and knowledge they hold. These relations extend far beyond the human. Each living being is held sacred in a way that upholds and sustains life. Without having a relationship to the land over time, we cannot possibly know the local ecosystem, the watersheds, the soil composition, the life cycles of the plants, when they bloom, when to harvest, how and how much to harvest, the way the sun crosses the horizon, the different creatures that depend on the land for their survival. And unfortunately, in this case, these relations transform to ones that are not reciprocal, but rather that of a settler colony that seeks to extract and dominate in relationship and shows an utter disregard for the sanctity of life and the people who stewarded those lands. And then just an example of this is how Israel has completely criminalized wild foraging of plants like zatar, wild thyme, and medamia, sage, and akub, which are, part and parcel to Palestinian life and livelihood and culture. And, they turned lands into preserves where people are not allowed to go and forage and actually have been arrested for doing so. And next slide, please. And now I really want to focus our attention on what's happening in Gaza. And I want to talk to you about a friend, Yusuf Abu Rabi'a, a farmer from Beit Lahia in the north of Gaza, who was targeted and killed by the Israeli military on October 21st, 2024, just a few months ago. Allah yarhamu, may God rest his soul. He was only 24 years old and comes from a long line of fellahin, or people who work the land, and they'd been working their land for generations. You may have heard about Yusuf because he, despite all the insurmountable odds, continued to grow and distribute food throughout the genocide happening to his community. Earlier on in the genocide, Yusuf's family's farmland was destroyed by Israel, both by airstrikes and by Israeli bulldozers that razed the land and infrastructure they had built, including a significant hydroponic operation and multiple greenhouses. Next slide, please. They had spent tens of thousands of dollars to build all of these structures, only to be left with nothing. But that did not stop Yusuf from tending to the seeds and plants. He was able to salvage some seeds and trays from the rubble and began growing hundreds, if not thousands, of seedlings literally on top of the destroyed buildings and land, as you can see in the picture on the right. And that's Yusuf in the photo with the white hat on tending to the seedlings. He was distributing whatever he could grow to hundreds in his community who were and still are enduring a man-made famine because of Israel's blockade of any humanitarian aid, preventing over 2 million people from eating. He refused to leave. He told me, "Where are we to go?" There was no safe place in Gaza, and more than that, this land was his life, livelihood, home, family, history, his entire universe. He was the ultimate symbol of Palestinian samud, or steadfastness. And for this, he was targeted and killed, along with so many tens of thousands of other Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. When I woke up to the news of his murder, I, along with so many others, was completely devastated. A bright light vanquished, stolen from us amidst such darkness. Yusuf and I had connected over our love for the land and our seeds, and he had said that once this war was over, we would meet and exchange our precious seeds. Tragically, we will never get the chance to do that. And I want to share a voice note that Yusuf sent me 10 days before he was killed, in which he talks about the importance of saving heritage seeds. Next slide, please. And Anna, there's a very small button on the bottom right that you can press.
بالنسبة لي إشي هذا Yeah, إشي عظيم there إشي we go. بسيط بالمرة
إنه الشخص يحافظ على البذور الأصلية تاعت بلده. هذا إشي يعني من الصعب حد يفهمه في الوقت الحالي. وانت عارف انه اليوم الكل متجه بالاصناف المهجنة والمستوردة، وقاعدين بيضحكوا على العالم بهيك شغلات، وهم بالاصل بياخذوا اصنافنا الاصلية وبيعملوا عليها الاصناف المهجنة. فانا للامانة مبسوط جدا انه في اشخاص هيك بتسوي. انا بالنسبة لي يعني صح بنتعامل بالاصناف المستوردة، بس احنا مجبورين ومضطرين. يعني احيانا ايش بنحاول نلاقي بنزرع، لانه اي حاجة بدنا اياها. لأنه تقريبا 99% من الأصناف البلدية مش موجودة. فإيش قدرت أحاول أدبر منها دبرت، وإيش لا ما قدرت، فالتجأت للأصناف المستوردة. آه، لهيك دي يعني إن شاء الله تخلص الحرب وأرجع أكون أصناف جديدة بلدية، أو نجيب من الأشخاص اللي برا غزة. فلأنه مهم جدا إنه نحافظ على هذه الأصناف، مهم جدا جدا جدا. فأنا بحترم وبقدر كل شخص بحافظ على الأصناف البلدية وين ما كان يكون، كل الاحترام.
And you can go to the next slide. I just want to translate this note that Yusuf sent me. And he says, "Hello, may God grant you wellness. To be honest, I may not know you and you may not know me well, but when I saw that you have collected local Palestinian seeds and are growing them where you live, outside of Gaza, outside of Palestine, in my opinion, this is something remarkable. This is not something trivial at all, that someone is preserving and protecting the original seeds of their homeland. This is something that is difficult for anyone to understand in the moment. And you know that today we are heading toward more and more hybrid and imported seeds, and they are sitting there fooling us with these kinds of things. And they are the ones who are taking the local seeds and turning them into hybrid varieties. Honestly, I'm very happy there are people like this who are protecting the local seeds. For me, it's true that we work with imported seeds, but we are forced to and have no choice. Usually, whatever we are able to find, we grow because we need everything we can find. About 99% of the local seed varieties are not available. So, whatever I tried to get from the local varieties, I did, and whatever I couldn't get, I didn't. So, I resorted to the imported seeds. Inshallah, God willing, this war ends and I will return to collecting local seed varieties or get them from the people who are living outside of Gaza. It's incredibly important for us to preserve and protect these local seed varieties. It's so, so, so important. I respect and appreciate any person who protects local seeds wherever they may be, with all my respect. Um, I think it's important just to hear the voice of somebody in Gaza too, because it's so easy to just let the numbers be what dominates. They just get relegated to just numbers and facts and data. But it's a whole person, and this was his livelihood, and this was his life. And I wish Yusuf would have lived to see the day that he could return to his land liberated once and for all. I also want to note the capacity of someone living in the midst of genocide to still be able to connect with others outside with so much love and hope. And for me, this is the resilience and spirit of the Palestinian people and those dreaming of our collective liberation. I also want to highlight the absurdity and tragedy of the fact that someone like me, living thousands of miles away, would be able to share the heritage seeds of our land with Yusuf or any farmer in Gaza because they are not available to them. And this also highlights that Gaza has been under siege and basically has been an open air prison for the last 17 years, the majority of Yusuf's life on earth. Israel controls all of the borders and what can enter and what can leave, down to the seeds that are available. What we are seeing today has not been happening in a vacuum. These events have been ongoing since before 1948. And when you hear stories like this, you can begin to understand the connection between land, seeds, and liberation. Farming for Yusuf literally meant his life. And you begin to see the ways that our erasure includes the erasure of knowledge that our communities have built and shared over countless generations. And this is something that is not entirely unique to Palestine. And we go to the next slide, please. Um, just some like stats on what the impact of the genocide in Gaza has been. I have them here, but I also can't stop thinking about all of the weapons that have been dropped there. An estimated 100,000 tons of explosives have been dropped on Gaza, a strip of land that is 141 square miles. And to give a sense of that land area, San Francisco is 47 square miles, and Oakland is 78 square miles. So imagine those two areas combined, which is even less than Gaza, 124 square miles, but having had 100,000 tons of explosives dropped on them, it's really something that is incomprehensible. And experts predict it could take years to clear the debris, amounting to more than 42 million tons, which is also rife with unexploded bombs. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to show a photo of what this looks like. This is an image of Deir el-Balah. And yeah, the destruction is really unfathomable. If you've been able to see any of the videos that people in Gaza have been sharing, it's been completely and totally annihilated. Entire cities and villages have been bombed into oblivion. And you wonder, how can land recover from such annihilation? I think about the water, the air, the soil, the overwhelming contaminants from these awful weapons and their imprint in our land and in our bodies. And these numbers don't even get to the impact on human life, not just those killed, but also those injured, permanently disabled. Children who have no families, they have a special acronym for people who have no families. Entire families wiped from family registries, homes destroyed, healthcare infrastructure destroyed, schools destroyed, all of the memories destroyed, and so much more. And now it feels like since the ceasefire was announced at the beginning of the year, Palestine and Gaza have been relegated yet again to the margins, although the bombing and killing of Palestinians has not stopped. Quite the opposite. Since March, Israel has killed 2,800 people in Gaza and has completely halted all humanitarian aid, including food and water, from entering. And now 470,000 people are facing catastrophic hunger. And all of the aid is just sitting at the borders, literally like meters, feet away, rotting because Israel refuses to allow any aid in, and no one is doing anything to stop them from ending this horror. We can go to the next slide. So I'm going to transition a bit now because I want to share a little bit about my family story to give a sense of the historical arc of what we are seeing today. We're from the village of Al-Malha, and were forcibly expelled, as was mentioned in the intro, during 1948 in the Nakba, along with 750,000 other Palestinians. And that is again to say that what is happening in Palestine did not begin 2 years ago. Our stories of expulsion have started over 100 years ago. And when I think about this, I think about the land, the life, the knowledge, and that collective loss. It is a continuum of loss and equally a continuum of resistance and hope. My family were fellahin, or people who lived entirely off the land. They became refugees in 1948, 77 years ago, almost to the exact day, and the majority of the knowledge held collectively within my family was gone within one generation. My dad did not grow up learning about or living off the land in the ways that his parents and previous generations had. And this loss is not singular or individual. We collectively suffer that loss. Humanity suffers that loss, just in the same way the original stewards of these lands that we stand on now have been erased from their ancestral lands. And to bring this closer to home, the devastating wildfires we see today in California are in part due to climate change, but also because the indigenous cultural practices of burning were criminalized and banned across the entire state of California and many other states across the country for over a century. So we all suffer from this erasure of the communities who have taken care of the lands, the waters, the life that sustains us. And not just that, we lose sight of our connection to the land, our connection to ourselves and to each other. Next slide, please. After our family was expelled from our village, my grandmother took care of our family by selling milk from her cow and feeding our family from the cow. My uncle calls the cow his second mother because their survival depended on her milk. My dad also told me that once our family became refugees, my teta, my grandmother, began growing produce to sell at the market to bring in some earnings for their family of 9. They had to move again at some point, and my grandmother no longer had access to land to grow. My father said she was never the same after that. I'm sure a part of her died and a part of the land died too. So many of our relationships to land and life have been severed as a result of colonization, capitalism, and ongoing occupation. which is why it's so important to remember who we are and where we come from. Next slide, please. A few years ago, I began farming and started an initiative called Thurayya. And in a way, working with the land feels like the most Palestinian way of being Palestinian. Coming from a family of fallahin, I understand that when we take care of the land takes care of us and gifts us an abundance that allows us to take care of each other, an infinite ripple across life. The seeds from Palestine are proof that we not only exist, but that we have a long history of being part of those lands, just as the centuries-old oak trees of California carry the memory of the indigenous communities who cared for these trees and the land. Those plants have evolved us, and we took care to save and take care of them season after season so that we could tend to life. And I often think that seed saving is like time traveling. A seed carries the genetic memory of its ancestors, and my ancestors took care of those seeds in order to guarantee a promise for our present and future survival. And this photo is one of the Palestine heirloom seed library in Batir that was founded by Vivian Sansour. And she says the mission of the seed library is to revitalize and conserve a living archive of our heirloom seeds, not just for Palestine, but also for the world. The world is in a hospice state, and we need all the different tools and biodiversity we can in order to adapt. And I was able to get some of the seeds that I'm growing now from them that I'm growing at the farm in Petaluma. And I see this as our duty and responsibility to carry on this tradition, to tend to the seeds, tend to life, to honor those who came before us and those who will come after us. Next slide, please. If the people of Gaza can continue tending to life amidst all they are enduring, then we must also act and continue our work in acts of solidarity alongside them, especially now as we see the current government continuing to threaten the most marginalized communities, both here and abroad. We are all connected in this life, and in witnessing what is happening in Palestine and the extensions of Palestine around the world, we can see the ways our histories and the liberation struggles are intertwined, from indigenous, Black, and brown communities in the Americas to Africa and Asia and beyond. Seeing the support and liberatory current that Palestine has activated across the world has been so inspiring and has truly given life to our weary, broken hearts. It is forcing us to confront our current trajectory as humans and the kind of life we want to create. For me, I want to be more like my Teta Sara and embody the wisdom of the land in my community. So in closing, I just ask that everyone keeps Gaza and Palestine as their compass in your hearts and how you go about your work. Divest, keep the BDS movement alive, continue fighting for an arms embargo and a free Palestine. Remember that we are the lovers and the land is our beloved. And remember people like Yusuf, who literally gave their lives to keep planting and taking care of the seeds. And I put on this last slide some resources and ways to support for other initiatives that people are doing. Gaza Mutual Aid Solidarity is one that Hadi Al-Asali has been sending money for people to continue making clay vessels to make bread and also hold food and water. Her family has a long tradition of making these very kind of iconic, almost now, clay vessels from Gaza. And the Middle East Children's Alliance is here in Berkeley. They've been doing amazing work too, getting aid to Gaza and to all Palestinian refugees across the region. Yeah, so thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Nadia, and just echoing what's already been shared on the chat. Thank you so much for sharing Yusuf's work and his work. Thank you for all the work you do. So inspiring. Papa, Mama's hungry. Oh, thank you, baby. So just wanting to hold space for folks who may have any additional questions for Nadia. And yeah, the work so vital. So important. Um, and we will share the resources. I've populated the chat with a lot of the resources as we followed along with Nadia's with the presentation, and the link to the Palestine Heirloom Food Library. Of course, Nadia has a whole bunch of other orgs at the end of the presentation. More just about Yusuf's work, Mahmoud Darwish's poems. These are all things for folks to continue to do the work of learning, and standing up in solidarity. Oh, this is a beautiful one. Thank you, Anna. What are some of your favorite seeds? I love that question. I'm really hoping that we have space here too at the Imagination Farm, that where we've planted some seeds also from Palestine. Can't wait to continue to cultivate and see them grow. So yeah, what do you think to grow, Nadia? What's your favorite? And why? There's always a story, right? Everything I know that on our farm is always about memory and a story. Love to hear yours.
Well, one of the most beloved plants for me is Medamia, which is the Palestinian wild sage. And usually the only way we get it is imported and it's dried, which is great. And I've always wanted to grow it here and never quite been able to find the variety for it. But I was able to get some seeds from Palestine. And growing salvia plants from seeds isn't the easiest, but I was able to five seeds germinated last year. So I have well, now there's four. One of them died, but four of those plants are alive and well, and it just brings me so much joy to see them here and be able to hopefully start more plants propagating from them. Although, you realize when you're growing plants away from their homes that it doesn't quite taste the same, and it makes you think a lot about the uniqueness of a place and the soil and the sun and the water. And so that's something you can bring home to you, but it's missing still part of its home. But I do love that plant. And I've also been able to grow mlachiyeh, which is called jute mallow in English, and it's a beloved crop. It's eaten in the Philippines. It's eaten in other parts of Asia, Africa, in the Caribbean, and we eat it like it's a slimy stew with chicken. It's really good for your respiratory health. Has a lot of um, great vitamins and minerals. But the plant itself is so beautiful to me. It has this just like very bright, mesmerizing green color. And then it's so generous with its seed pods, and they look like stars. And then the seeds themselves look like these tiny emeralds. So I've just been like falling in love with them. Yes.
That's right. Somebody posted saluyot. Yeah, I'm trying to do that here as well. Yes, I love that texture. The sliminess of it somehow is still offers so much comfort. But thank you for sharing that, and I'm hoping that when we connect in person, I'd love to be able, whatever seeds you may have and can share, we'd love to try to grow here as well. Any other questions that folks may have about Nadia's work, um, and what she shared in her presentation? I know we don't have a whole lot of time, wanting to honor folks online, and also yours, Nadia. I guess for me, and we kind of talked about it before we officially opened the Zoom room, is I feel like you've made a really compelling case around the importance of this land work, the seed saving. But I wonder if you can speak to the ways in which perhaps in different moments, or even maybe now, how maybe do you ever experience people feeling like this isn't the work really, that somehow protest is the work, You know, I mean, obviously, like for example, you know, there are folks right now in the state capitol protesting against these particular, you know, these pieces of state legislation. And, you know, obviously there's been so much protest work all throughout the Bay Area, encampments on campuses. Um, you know, I know sometimes in my own experience, and don't know how it feels for other people, the land work we're doing here too at Reimagination Farm, I think many people feel like it's not maybe as militant or as radical or something. But I'm wondering how you've experienced that, if you've experienced that at all, and how you address it if it ever comes up. But it may not, but I wonder.
Yeah, I definitely have felt that in different ways, and it's kind of why it took me as long as it did to start doing this work. I'm a kind of veteran of I mean, I've been going to protests since I was 3 years old. I mean, my mom came into my room and I was playing with my dolls, like doing like protest chants. So, but if anything, the land has taught me more and more that we need all of us, and it's not one thing that is going to get us there. And I do think that the way that unfortunately, like white environmentalism and like back to the landers have kind of distorted what our land work means, has made the work that we're doing feel like part of that and like cute. I think if that's what you want to call it, or not, effective enough. But I think, I've been thinking about this a lot. It's really about like what we are bringing, like what intentions we're bringing to the land. And for me, I've seen how healing and transformational it's been to be part of the land. And literally, I mean, like being Palestinian for me is about working with the land and restoring those relationships that we have held for so long. And I think, for me too, just seeing the way that young people are when they're back on the land, and it's like the young and the old. When I see the elders reconnecting with these plants that they haven't seen or tasted for a long time or ever seen in this place, it there's a kind of like embodied joy that I don't think anything else can bring them. And like when I see my kid and his friends on the land, it's the most free I think that they ever seem. And for me, that's enough. And to connect with people like Yusuf even, sometimes it can feel really lonely and isolating, doing, I think, any type of work that you're doing. But really, it's about being connected to one another and how we're connecting to one another, and seeing each of us as a sum of our parts. Like we really need all of us. And I think in doing land-based work, you you really feel that, because it's really hard to do this work alone.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. But I feel like that's what a nice way to even end. It's a kind of talking about how land work is the opportunity to really deeply embody joy and like freedom, I think is maybe what you said. And maybe that's why this work is so important, is we need to remember what the fight is about. And there is something about land work that allows you to embody freedom, that kind of fuels the fight that still needs to happen. But really, really grateful for that framing and that sharing. And we will have to end there for everybody else. I get you for a little bit of time afterwards, Nadia, if you still have some spaciousness for that. But again, folks, please consider continuing to do the work of learning more about what's happening. Nadia has shared. May 15th, it's interesting you talk about the history of just, in Palestine around May 15th. But even here where I live in Lake County, May 15th marks the Bloody Island massacre that happened against Homo people. So interesting, the state charged with so much settler violence. But, a moment for us to remember these histories and the ways they connect and the work we can be done. So please continue the work of learning, folks who are on the line of participating and being in solidarity. So many ways to do that. And again, thank you so much for folks for joining, and Nadia for all your work. And we will close the Zoom room with that. We'll definitely send a bunch of links to folks from the talk today, and the recording for others who may not have been able to join synchronously. I thank you so much, everyone. And we'll, join us again. We have a whole bunch of lectures coming up in the next few weeks. Please watch out for them, follow our Instagram, or sign up for our newsletter. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.